Who was the person in Canada?
Yeah. You have to. Yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the IATA UPU ICAO webinar on airmail safety, global de minimis trends, and radiopharmaceuticals. I want to double check that you can hear me and that you can see me.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
All right. Okay. This joint IATA UPU ICAO webinar is the first of two webinars planned for 2026 on enhancing safety and security. The first topic will be a 15-minute presentation by the International Atomic Energy Agency on the facilitation of the safe and secure transport of Class 7 radioactive materials to mitigate the issue of denial and delay of shipments of radiopharmaceuticals vital for cancer diagnosis and treatment. The second and key topic of the webinar will focus on lithium batteries in airmail and their challenges, addressing the potential danger of lithium batteries. This section will include a 10-minute presentation by the moderator, Ms. Lynn McGuigan, Technical Officer at ICAO, followed by a 30-minute discussion with experts from the postal and aviation industries, as well as postal and civil aviation authorities. The third topic of the webinar will be another 15-minute presentation by the Universal Postal Union, UPU, and La Poste France on the de minimis requirements and impact on air transport, the global de minimis trend, and the effective implementation by DPOs and air carriers. Before we start, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping rules. This webinar will be recorded with your implicit consent by taking part in it, and I'm going to kindly ask all speakers to turn and keep your cameras on and to turn your microphones on when needed. To all other participants, please turn your cameras and microphones off. Given the limited time and the number of participants, only our expert speakers will be able to speak. Questions will be allowed only in the chat box. I will ask participants to type your questions in the chat, and depending on time, our experts will answer your questions right away or in subsequent hours or days after the webinar by email. Also, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the introduction of our distinguished experts, but you can find their bios in the banner that was sent to you and in the ICAO website. Finally, at the end of the webinar, I'm going to put in the chat box a link and a QR code to a survey that will help us improve future webinars. So without further delay, let's get started. I'm going to hand over the floor to Mr. Ulrich Schwela, Chair of the International Steering Committee on Denial of Shipments at the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. Mr. Schwela, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just to clarify, are you sharing the slides directly, or shall I share from my computer? Either is fine.
As you wish, Mr. Schwela.
Okay, I will do it from here. And then if this will allow me, just a second. I don't seem to be able to share on this occasion, so I'm going to have to ask you to do that.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
I can, but if we can have presentation mode, it will be easier to read.
Okay.
Thank you. That's perfect. Yes, so thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you to the, well, I see over 150 people on this webinar who found the time to join us. First of all, a clarification. I'm the consultant here at the Transport Safety Unit of the IAEA, tasked principally on the issue of denials and delays of shipment and the actions that we are taking to address that. I will be mentioning a denial of shipment working group, but I'm not the chair. So that is somebody else, but I am the consultant focused on this. If you could have the next slide, please. Yeah, so I will be going through the applications of radioactive material. What is their importance? What is this issue of denial of shipment? What do we mean by this problem? And what are we doing to address this through facilitation? What the DOS working group is, and one of its key outputs, which is a white paper, and the mitigating measures that are coming from that. So next slide. So I'll start with a rhetorical question, if you will. So if you were to ask people, what is radioactive material? What is it used for? Well, in my experience and others, I have corroborated this. If you ask somebody, the number one response you will get is nuclear power, nuclear energy, and something to do with nuclear fuel cycle. Very rarely do you get somebody who will come up with a different answer, for example, medicine. So next slide. So in fact, nuclear power is very important, but it is a minor component of the many, many applications. And as we don't have time to go through all these applications in the call, and our focus, as noted, is radiopharmaceuticals because they are a key component of air transport. I'll just note that nuclear power, for example, covers 5% approximately of the volume of transport of radioactive materials. Radiopharmaceuticals account for 80%, 80%. And in air transport, it is even more weighted towards radiopharmaceuticals. So next slide, please. So what is the need for transport? Well, we have lots of places where material will come from. We click through. We have mines, producers, source manufacturers. If you can click again. So of course, they all need transport. If you click again, then because without transport, you can't get the material through to where it is needed. It's so obvious, but often we find that transport is taken for granted, and it's something that just happens. You produce something, it's highly controlled and researched and developed, and it is used, and it has very many different applications and in high technology, in medicine, and it is just assumed that it will just get there. But transport is a very, well, it's the essential element, and as we will find out, there are some difficulties that have to be addressed. So if we move forward. First of all, to reassure those who are not aware of it already, many of you will know this already. If you just click through to the end of this slide with Helio, SSR 6 are the transport regulations developed by the agency here, the IAEA. They are the basis for the national regulatory frameworks, and these are then incorporated into the UN model regulations. If you keep clicking through with Helio, then these are, as is obvious, known as the UN Orange Book, and they in turn, while these two first documents are not mandatory, I'll just keep clicking through with Helio, so we have the screen filled. And these are not mandatory, but they are the basis for modal regulations. So obviously we have the technical instructions from ICAO for air transport. We have the IMDG code from the IMO for maritime transport, and various other agreements, including those for the UPU. If you just keep clicking through, and we will see them all here. Okay, so just to note that those of the ICAO, IMO, and UNECE and others, they are the ones that are legal requirements. And this is just to remind everybody of what the framework is, and that it is highly controlled, regulated, organized, and harmonized. However, if we keep going to the next slide, despite this, we have difficulties in the transport. So this is what we call denial of shipment. If we move forward. So what is denial of shipment? Well, if you click again, we get a first type, which is policy. So it could be a port or an airport that simply has a policy not to accept these materials, and there are root causes beneath that. But more often than not, consigners or consignees who are trying to obtain transport, when inquiring through a carrier, they may find a blanket policy from that carrier, but that is typically not the reason of the root cause for that denial. There will be other reasons, such as complexity or airport denials that are the cause of denials by carriers. So if we click through, another type of denial is something that will occur during the journey. So you have a shipment that has been accepted. It could be a small package, it could be an entire container, or something even larger, going by, doesn't matter which mode, it could be air, it could be land or sea. And at some point during the journey, there will be a denial, an unexpected denial. It could be due to a political change. It could be due to an approval being revoked. It could be due to some event that is happening during the transport. And maybe the risk profile, the assessment during that transport means that the approval is no longer accepted, or a port that was part of a planned route has changed its mind, shall we say, and is no longer accepting that ship, and it has to be rerouted. Now, this can lead to extensive delays while a new route is being planned. And speaking of delays, if we click through again, sometimes there is not an outright denial, but there is an event during the transport that leads to extra time. And for a long-lived radioactive material, for example, a say cobalt-60 or anything containing uranium, thorium, or natural materials, or then these are an inconvenience, but they are not critical. But for radiopharmaceuticals with short half-lives, a delay of even hours or even or days can mean that the material is as good as denied and no longer usable. If we click through. So facilitation is the positive effort that is being made to address the negative aspect of denial of shipment. And just to note here, the efforts that have already been carried out. On the left, we have efforts already taken 20 years ago by the IMO through its facilitation committee. On the right, we have efforts undertaken by ICAO addressing Annex 9 and its through its facilitation division. And if we click through, from the IAEA, we obviously have been collaborating with other UN organizations for decades, but in the last few years, particularly regarding this area, we have very much increased and enhanced this collaboration. First of all, through, of course, having the participation of the other UN organizations in the Denial Shipment Working Group. We have developed a joint statement with ICAO that, amongst other things, is focusing on the sustainable transport of radioactive materials, especially radiopharmaceuticals. There's a module being developed together with the IMO, and last September at the ICAO Assembly, a working paper was presented from the IAEA, noting in particular the importance of radiopharmaceuticals. If we move forward. There was a conference organized by the IAEA, International Conference on Transport, at the end of March. And just to note here a couple of points from that week-long conference, that the central goal included a mention of enhancing the facilitation of safe and secure transport. And next slide. That there was a panel session amongst multiple panel sessions. There was one focused on radiopharmaceuticals and having sustainable supply chains for those, noting the time-critical nature, how delays for radiopharmaceuticals is as good as equaling a denial or a mistreatment. And here it's important to note that the consequence of what do we mean by mistreatment. This was explained at length in that session, and it is recorded and can be found online. If you search for that conference and the panel session, you will find a recording of that session. And basically that when we say mistreatment, it is not just one patient who is affected. There is a complex series of group of patients affected and delays that then knock on to other groups of patients, and they are all part of a carefully planned, controlled series of treatments that have to function in a series for them to be effective and to have their life-saving of potential fulfilled. So what can be done? It was noted that these materials need to be prioritized. Coordination needs to continue to be strengthened, and that awareness using simple non-technical messaging needs to be enhanced. If we move forward. So I mentioned the Denial Shipment Working Group. If we move forward. This was established by the IAEA for a 4-year period, so it's ending this year. I'm not going to go into detail because in the interest of time, but just to say that during those 4 years, a lot of work in analyzing this, not just from scratch, but looking at the work that had been done over the previous 2 decades. So it's not something that we are starting from nothing with. And amongst various work that has been conducted by this group, most importantly is a white paper on facilitation, which I will describe, that was approved at the end of April meeting, and they were going to have a last meeting in December, where we will look, amongst other things, at how will this issue be addressed and monitored from 2027 onwards. So next slide. Just to note here some of the work that's been done, and I haven't got time to explain this, but to note that analyses have been performed, surveys, data gathering for the experience of member states, of industry and of carriers. So if we move forward. And some of the outputs are a communication strategy, which is intended to be used as a reference for anybody who wishes to, but especially national focal points. A handbook on these national focal points, and I haven't mentioned them before, so I'll just note that these are nominated people in each country to address denial of shipment in their country, to coordinate amongst each other between countries, and to essentially be there to help facilitate and identify potential solutions to any immediate or systemic difficulties in transport. And a list can be found online, amongst other things, here at this website, which where there is a link, you will find the list for those national focal points, of which there are now 74 countries have nominated these. And most important, the white paper that I mentioned, including the conclusions, recommendations of the working group, looking back at everything that has been done over more than 20 years. Next slide. And then, so moving forward on the white paper. Next slide. Yeah, so first drafted in December, hundreds of comments were taken in and multiple reviews done over the following months, just to show the level of interest and the level of input from the various stakeholders and people in the working group. As I said, this was approved at the end of April, and just this week we are now getting this out. It is being disseminated by the Secretariat here to its member states, and from there we hope for that message to spread further. So again, what does the white paper do? It defines denial of shipment, as mentioned earlier, root causes and consequences, recognizes previous efforts, which I mentioned briefly, and importantly recommends a series of mitigation measures, 8 of these, and general conclusions. So next slide. The root causes. I mentioned the perception issue. If you ask people what they think of nuclear, and from there's a short step between people thinking of anything radioactive to do with Chernobyl, and this tends to be a negative perception, but people are not aware of the many positive applications of these materials, and so it's a huge awareness gap. There is a series of conferences. I think somebody's got their microphone on. If they could switch their microphone off, please. Could mute yourselves. Okay. I will continue. So the awareness gap in the perception of these materials and the complexity that applies, and these are root causes that then affect how well radioactive material is accepted in transport. And consequences of these are then on the material, but not just the patient healthcare, but also the sustainability in terms of resource use. We have the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and wanting to improve the economic development and minimizing resource usage. And of course, if you are having longer transport routes, delays, and having to replan routes, this all works against those principles. So if we move forward, as I see we are running out of time despite best efforts. So here we have the mitigation measures. They are aimed at various different stakeholders, and I encourage all the people here on the call to inquire further about the contents of the white paper and what they can do and in their role in this important supply chain. First of all, it recognized the joint statement that is in development between various member states as a member state initiative. It notes the existing network of national focal points, the importance of sustaining that. And again, you have the link to find a list of those. Notes the value and importance of recording deviations in regulations from the international regulatory framework. ICAO, at the link given, already lists these variations as they are called. The IA refers to them as deviations, and member states are encouraged to identify and publish these. We're looking to increase cooperation between international organizations in addition to what is already being done, and to improve outreach and awareness. So this is a communication issue, and this is all stakeholders need to work on this. The IA to continue enhancing what it already does, which is to improve capacity building among member states. So next slide. And then here, the final set of mitigation measures. One in particular was specifically focused on medical radioactive material, which includes radiopharmaceuticals. One, member states to look at submitting proposals for change to the UN classification of these materials. Secondly, and necessarily in coordination, operators, which is to mean consigners, carriers, consignees, to look to submit proposals for change to IATA, special handling codes, that would work in conjunction with any changes to the UN classification being proposed. Member states, importantly, need to maintain availability of ports and airports for the transport of radioactive material, whether it's import, export, transshipment, or transit. And finally, to work on the communication amongst stakeholders in their countries. Next slide. Coming to the end. Conclusions. This transport, as I explained, is essential. If you can't have sustainable transport, you can't have the beneficial uses of these materials. Short-lived medical and radiopharmaceuticals are of absolutely most critical and of an immediate and obvious humanitarian benefit. Member states should recognize these and work through nominating national focal points if they don't have one already. And that, again, looking at this through a lens going back 20 years, the responsibility is increasingly with the states, although all stakeholders here need to work together in coordination to address this. And that it has been recognized multiple times, this issue can never be entirely eliminated. So it's important to be realistic. However, through this coordinated action, we can have a significant reduction of this issue. So next slide. So as I said, the IA is disseminating this white paper. The General Conference in September will be notified of this, and the member states in particular on this webinar, we encourage you to follow this up, make inquiries, inform yourself, and we will be, I expect, sharing this afterwards so that you then can follow up the links and read further. And there is work to be done on we're not just publishing a white paper, there is work to be done following on from that. So final slide. Just to note upcoming events, I mentioned General Conference in September. We are looking to have a side event, so the IA will be supporting a side event led by Canada, supported by France and Switzerland on specifically this white paper. In December, there will be the final meeting of the working group, looking to how we move forward from next year onwards. And in the second quarter of next year, we will have another in a series of interregional training workshops for these national focal points, and the next one will be in Abuja in Nigeria. So thank you, and again, if you can email or submit questions in the chat, that is it from me, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schuela. That was a very interesting presentation on the radiopharmaceuticals. So as you said, any questions in the chat will be answered by you in subsequent hours or days. So moving on to the second topic and main topic of the webinar, lithium batteries and their challenges, I am going to hand the floor over to Ms. Lynn McGuigan, Ms. McGuigan is a technical officer in the Air Navigation Bureau at ICAO. So, Ms. McGuigan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Virgilio, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I am happy to be with you today. I'm just going to share a little presentation on just to give you an overview of the challenges we're facing in air transport with lithium batteries in airmail. So before I get into it, I know there's many people here today. The list keeps growing, and some of you may not know exactly what ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, does. ICAO is a United Nations specialized agency that was created in 1944, before the end of World War II, upon the signing of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, which we call in short the Chicago Convention. The vision of ICAO is a safe, secure, and sustainable international civil aviation organization that connects the world for the benefit of all nations and people. And it has several strategic objectives that are highlighted on this slide for aviation to be safe and secure, green, seamless, accessible, reliable mobility, provide economic prosperity and social well-being, that the convention, treaties, laws, and regulations address all challenges, and that no country is left behind. Oh, I'm having trouble moving my... There. The convention is a relatively stable document, but it's supported by 19 annexes to the convention that are amended more frequently. Annex 18 is the one most related to the safe transport of dangerous goods. You can see on the picture that it's a very thin document, but it's supported by the thick document on the right. And there's an important standard in Annex 18 that says each contracting state shall take the necessary measures to achieve compliance with the detailed provisions contained in the technical instructions. And the annex and the technical instructions are applicable to all international operations of civil aircraft. The scope of the technical instructions is really the safe transport of cargo by air. So most of the book is devoted to shipping items as cargo by air. Dangerous goods carried by passengers and crew are forbidden, except for certain dangerous goods that are listed in the technical instructions. It's about 8 pages of a table of different types of dangerous goods that are permitted. And then, of course, mail. Mail, dangerous goods are also not permitted in mail. And in fact, that's the same for all modes of transport. It's not permitted in any kinds of mail, except for a few items. And this aligns with the UPU convention. So patient specimens, category B infectious substances, and dry ice if they need to be refrigerated, radioactive material in accepted packages. These, prior to 2013, were the only substances that were permitted in the mail, and they were subject to they are still stringent packing requirements and in very small quantities that pose a negligible, really no risk to aviation. And there's a recommendation for appropriate national authorities to ensure provisions are complied with. And there is, in Annex 18, there was an annex, a standard that said each contracting state should establish procedures with a view to controlling the introduction of dangerous goods into air transport through its postal services, and international procedures for controlling the introduction of dangerous goods into air transport through the postal services have been established by the Universal Postal Union. Despite these requirements and restrictions, dangerous goods that are not permitted in the mail are often discovered. That includes aerosols, perfume, cigarette lighters, and yes, lithium batteries. In around 2011, the UPU convention was amended to include equipment containing no more than 4 lithium cells or 2 lithium batteries in the international, to permit them in the international post. UPU requested ICAO to harmonize Airmail provisions in the 2013-24 edition of the technical instructions to align with the UPU convention. A proposal was brought to a panel of experts that supports ICAO in maintaining the technical instructions in Annex 16. Now, lithium batteries are a big concern to aviation because they pose unique hazards. They provide both an ignition source and fuel for a fire. They're capable of thermal runaway, which is an escalation of heat that results in fire, smoke, and toxic and explosive gases. It's become a big challenge in aviation. So when the proposal was presented to the expert group at ICAO, their answer was no. But there was a lot of dialogue, and finally the dangerous goods panel thought that maybe is there a way to allow lithium batteries contained in equipment in Airmail in a way that will help manage the risk. And one of the problems over the years has always been a need for stronger coordination between civil aviation authorities and designated postal operators. So the panel recommended that, yes, maybe allow the introduction of lithium batteries contained in equipment in the mail, but only under specific conditions. So one, the procedures of designated postal operators for controlling the introduction of dangerous goods in the mail would be subject to review and approval by the CAA of the state where the mail is accepted. And then there would need to be a specific approval from the CAA before the DPO could introduce the acceptance of lithium batteries contained in equipment in the mail. And the ones that are accepted, so this was eventually agreed and it was incorporated in the 2013-2014 edition of the technical instructions, but these are very small batteries, well, small batteries with a watt-hour limit of under 100 watts for a battery or 20 watts for a cell, and no more than 4 cells or 2 batteries in any single package. And then the annex to the convention was also amended, including the need for the procedures of DPOs for controlling the introduction of dangerous goods in mail to be approved by the CAA of the state where the mail is accepted, and also requirements for the DPO's training programs to be approved by the CAA. Guidance for approving the procedures and the training program were included in a supplement to the technical instructions. So where are we now? Well, there's been approximately 40 designated postal operators that have approval to accept lithium batteries. But despite that, dangerous goods that are not permitted in the mail, including lithium batteries, are still being discovered today. So today we're trying to discuss what measures are being taken to address this ongoing risk, and is there anything more that needs to be done. So I'm happy to have with us 4 gentlemen on a panel that will be discussing these challenges. We have Mr. Eric Gillett, a dangerous goods inspector at Qatar Civil Aviation Authority, Mr. Keith Rank, hazardous materials aviation safety analyst within FAA's Cargo Safety and International Affairs Division of the United States, Pascal Lay, Cargo Customer Solutions Manager at Cathay Pacific, and Gerald Gales, Hazmat Aviation Mail Security Specialist at the United States Postal Inspection Service. So I'll stop sharing my presentation and invite the panel to join me by turning on their cameras. And I will start. My first question will be posed to Mr. Eric Gillett. Are you there, Eric?
I'm here.
Okay. Does the screen look okay, Virgilio? Okay. I don't see Eric on the screen. Okay. So Eric, just if you could elaborate on how non-compliant lithium battery shipments introduce risk into the air transport system and what makes improperly prepared shipments particularly dangerous.
Sure, Lynn. So you mentioned the hazards that lithium batteries present, and they're fundamentally different from the older chemistries of batteries because they pack a lot more energy in a much smaller form factor, and when that energy is released, it's released quite aggressively. Particularly untested, faulty, damaged, or abused can produce intense heat, flammable gases, and a self-sustaining fire. That's of particular concern in aviation because aircraft fire protection systems are designed to fight conventional fires on board an aircraft, and they're not capable of fully containing lithium battery fires. Once initiated, these events can escalate very rapidly. Just a brief mention of the Air Busan incident last year. For those familiar, fire started from a power bank that was carried in the passenger cabin. But it demonstrated how serious a fire can be when involving a relatively small lithium battery. The global demand now for low-cost battery power products continues to grow, so the number of lithium batteries moving through the air transport system and the number of thermal runaway incidents has also increased. The postal system itself, particularly working with e-commerce, introduces additional vulnerabilities. A significant proportion of shipments originate from individuals or small-scale consigners, many of whom have limited awareness of dangerous goods requirements, and this increases the likelihood of prohibited or non-compliant battery shipments entering the mail stream. There are limitations also in detection. Pre-departure screening processes are designed to identify security threats, not dangerous goods, so lithium batteries are often not intercepted. Mail also often transported in mail bags, so you have the potential for risk aggregation, where multiple prohibited batteries can be co-located in a single bag, and so if one of them fails, that can then propagate the fire to other lithium batteries in the same bag or in close proximity, which increases the severity of the event. So taken together, these factors mean that the risk within mail from prohibited standalone batteries, such as power banks, or from batteries containing equipment that are mispacked, damaged, or of poor quality is disproportionately higher.
Thank you, Eric. So it's clear this is a big concern at ICAO, and Eric speaking as a state regulator, it's taking up a lot of oversight energy to help mitigate this. And of course, our airline operators are the ones that are responsible for what they put on their aircraft. So it's a big concern for them. So with that, I'd like to ask Pascal, from an airline perspective, what are your main challenges and how does non-compliance affect day-to-day operations for airlines?
Thank you, Lynn. The biggest problem we face right now is a hidden danger triggered by the e-commerce boom. And there is a rising number of lithium batteries entering global postal channels. And for an airline, a sealed mailbag definitely is a black box. It easily hides undeclared or counterfeit batteries shipped by consumers who have no idea dangerous goods regulations even exist. So, but the risk is catastrophic. Just one faulty battery can trigger an unstoppable fire. And in the air, there is no room for error. And that is why stopping this nightmare is our top priority. And this brings me to our biggest operational headache at Cathay Cargo. We call it systemic strandings. While 100% origin screening is mandatory, rescreening at our Hong Kong transit hub only happens under specific conditions. Like, for example, shipments from high-risk origins or bags with detached tags. Here's the catch. When we do rescreen and our X-ray flags a suspected lithium battery, we hit a massive regulatory brick wall. Airlines have zero authority to open the sealed postal bags to isolate the threat. So basically, we are legally stuck. To make matters worse, carded messaging data is often empty. Without item level visibility, we cannot legally or safely put that mail on our flight. As a result, mail, of course, gets stranded on our floor, warehouse floors, backlogs pile up, and we miss the time commitments. So why is this so hard to resolve? When a scanner flags a suspected item, we cannot pinpoint which exact package inside that sealed bag is the problem. Because the origin postal operator shares no data to us, the entire supply chain grinds to a halt. To resolve it, we have to contact the origin operator, get permission, and involve our local postal operator just to open the bag. This always triggers weeks of painful back and forth. And then, of course, storage costs skyrocket, deadlines are missed, and also customer complaints flood in. So how do we move forward? At our Hong Kong hub, we deployed AI-powered X-ray technology across all our screening lines since 2024. And the AI is incredibly smart. For example, if shipping data claims a box contains T-shirt, but computer vision sees the unmistakable shape and density of a lithium battery, the AI instantly flags that mismatch. Furthermore, our thermal imaging software tracks temperature anomalies to catch early stage thermal runaway before a fire even starts. So this works brilliantly for loose cargo, but for mail, we hit the same wall. We need, of course, AI can flag a threat, but the sealed mail bag remains a legal black box to us. So for conclusion, without data sharing and the right to inspect, AI cannot solve this alone, of course. And we need regulatory harmony to give us the teeth to act. Connecting advanced technology with global collaboration is, I think, is the only way to secure our skies and keep commerce moving. Thank you.
Thanks, Pascal. Yeah, I was going to ask Eric again if you think the measures introduced by ICAO are helping. Clearly, the problem isn't solved based on what Pascal is telling us, but do you think the measures introduced by ICAO are at least helping?
Yeah, I certainly do when they're properly applied. One thing to bear in mind is that a simple ban might be seen to be the simple answer, but the intent of having the controls subject to review and approval by the authority, the aviation authority, was that just banning something doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to be there. The ubiquity of lithium batteries and those containing equipment in virtually every consumer electronic device we use means they're going to be likely to be entering mail streams, whether they're allowed or not. So I think it's important to bear in mind that just a ban isn't really the solution. I mean, it really is the most important thing is for the aviation authorities to reach out to the postal authorities and to start the conversation. And there's some techniques such as doing sample screenings to identify the extent to which dangerous goods might be present. One state I've worked in found that around 15% of mail items contained dangerous goods of one kind or another, mostly prohibited items of the nature that you discussed, Lynn. So some research to find out what's there, and then considering each of the different entry points into the mail system to try and determine what controls would be appropriate. So, for example, if a state has access to if a member of the public can access a mailbox and there's no human interaction, they're completely anonymous, that would almost entirely be reliant on awareness, so information that's communicated by the postal authority. Whereas by comparison, if mail is accepted over a counter, that gives an opportunity, if the DPO and the authority feel it's appropriate, to apply questions, particularly if somebody volunteers that they're offering batteries and equipment, and they have the approval to do that. And those simple questions can be designed to be readily understood by the staff and by the customer, and do the primary checks to be satisfied about the battery type, quantity, whether it's packed in a manner that will allow safe transport. So the short answer is we couldn't do nothing. The dangerous goods are going to be entering mail streams, whether they're permitted or not. So the decision was to come up with a system to facilitate what could be transported safely, and we just have to carry on working together to improve that.
Okay, good, encouraging, thank you. I think I've been asking the questions on the aviation side of the house, so now I'm going to ask Gerald, in your role as a hazmat aviation mail security specialist, can you give some insight on the kinds of measures designated postal operators are taking to ensure compliance with the requirements?
Thank you, Lynn. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. We recognize that states that have yet to obtain their special approval may lack adequate policies and procedures to prohibit these items in the mail stream. Now, specific to the U.S. Post, acknowledging the unique dynamic of our customer base, which is essentially the entire public, we recognize the importance of these measures. So therefore, we implemented the following initiatives as examples. One, customer awareness enhancement. So we've developed dedicated posters. We have public service announcements, videos online, as well as tutorials online, again, to enhance awareness of our customers when they are shipping in our networks. Internally, recognizing the reality that our retail clerks are the frontline gatekeepers guiding our customers, we strengthen measures to educate and provide useful tools to help clerk assess mailability of dangerous goods items, including lithium batteries. One significant tool that we developed is a retail acceptance counter guide. It's a user-friendly tool that helps to simplify the requirements for clerks to assess and provide clear guidance to our customers. On the technical side of things, we have also implemented measures to program our systems to ensure mailable hazmat items that are restricted to surface transportation will not receive airmail service. We have also implemented what we call hazmat indicators to mail postage labels that will ensure visibility of these hazmat shipments in our network to effectively manage the volume and prevent such items from being tendered for international air transport. On the incident tracking end, we developed and implemented a hazmat incident tracking system to monitor incidents and trends in the network, allowing us to address issues, find root causes, and implement corrective actions. We have a dedicated hazmat dangerous goods team within the inspection service that monitors the system, and applicable enforcement measures are taken. Last but not least, considering the exponential growth of devices operated by lithium batteries, per our commitment to air safety, measures were implemented to restrict used, defective, or damaged equipment containing lithium batteries in the surface network and prohibit it from being tendered to air, including international mail networks. And so these are some of the best practices, Linda, we hope to share in the ECLB mentorship program. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of good things being done on your, but from the mail side of the house, and also from the aviation side of the house. Based on what Eric said, we still have problems based on what Pascal said. And I guess my concern is we may have good systems in place in some states, but not all. So I'm wondering, I'm going to ask Keith, can you give us some examples of how how states can support designated postal operators in developing effective procedures for accepting lithium batteries contained in equipment and airmail and obtaining the necessary approval from the civil aviation authorities?
Absolutely. Thanks for the question, Lynn. I'm in complete agreement with Eric, who indicated that it really is one of the primary things we can do is to ensure that the CAAs are properly enforcing and reviewing the DPO's policies and procedures. And as indicated, I think, not directly, but all the panel members have indicated, and what I think, in my experience, is of paramount importance, is that DPOs and CAAs establish and maintain effective regular communication. I think that is probably the premier thing that can be done at this point. This communication allows CAAs visibility into postal operations and the opportunity to identify risks that are unique to the carriage of DG and airmail. It also gives us the potential to identify gaps in their policies, training, and procedures, promotes incident data sharing. In our case, it's allowed for coordinated investigations, and it drives greater awareness of ICAO regulations that some DPOs might not have with their CAA. Secondary, I think we have a large audience today, and if I can entreat right now the fact that I think it's essential that CAAs and DPOs that have the capacity participate in the efforts of their international regulatory bodies, whether it's working groups or the panel meetings themselves, the 4C3, whether it's the IATA UPU contact committee or the ICAO UPU contact committee, to actually give their time and expertise to help these efforts. Right now, specific to this conversation, the ICAO UPU contact committee established what's called the equipment containing lithium batteries expert team. The team was stood up to deal specifically with the challenges that lithium batteries pose in mail and facilitate DPOs gaining their special approval. To that end, in 2023-2024, the expert team was responsible for the design and distribution of 3 targeted surveys that were distributed to both DPOs and CAAs to determine why so few states have sought and received the special approval. As you had indicated, the numbers hovering around 40 out of 193. That number, obviously, as both Eric and Gerald indicated, the program has merits. I think that it would do a lot to get these DPOs their special approval. So right now, the ECLB team, after reviewing the survey results, the ECLB expert team really kind of started pushing toward a mentorship initiative. So we looked at the survey results, and they revealed it's a mixed bag. But there are some critical areas of concern. I'm going to take a quick look at some numbers because I didn't have them memorized. So on the good front, 60% of the respondent DPOs that have not received their special approval indicated that that's something that they would like to gain. So it's good that there's so many DPOs that are interested. On the concerning front, 40% indicated that they don't have a POC within their CAA. So, of the DPOs that have not been certified, 40% don't even have a contact within their CAA, which is something we really could address. 20% of the respondents indicated that they were unsure of the benefits that this program could have. And 30% indicated that they were unaware that there was even a requirement, which is extremely concerning. That many of the respondents didn't even know that there was a ICAO requirement for that special approval. So with those numbers, and in addition, 40% indicated they couldn't justify the cost or the manpower needed to actually get their special approval. The ECLB expert team developed a mentorship initiative. The initiative was devised to provide assistance to DPOs requesting help in obtaining their special approval. by the UPU pairing them with a CAA DPO from a state that's already gone through the special approval process. That would allow them a first level review of the DPO's training and standard operating procedures to identify and address any of those gaps, any found gaps. The pairings also would allow for the sharing of best practices and stakeholder engagement materials, as a lot of the DPOs that have yet to gain that special approval are ones that were indicated that have extremely small numbers employed by their designated postal operators. So manpower is definitely an issue. So this is a capacity building effort, which should aid in the expediting of the special approval process and increase the likelihood for successful completion.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot of very interesting, sometimes positive, and sometimes a lot more work is needed kind of information. So we're getting close to the end of our time here. So I'd like to close off by giving both from the DPO perspective and the CAA perspective. I'll ask Gerald first. Do you think what more can be done to help with this, with the non-compliance issue from a DPO perspective? And then I'll ask the same. I don't know if you want to add anything, Keith, if you do, or if anybody else on the panel wants to add anything from a CAA perspective. So I'll start with Gerald.
Thank you, Lynn. I believe from the DPO perspective, I think additional push via top-down approach is needed for DPO supporting compliance, to include some form of enforcement measures to address DPOs that have yet to obtain proper certification to carry equipment containing lithium batteries. Again, this is just my opinion, but to expand further and provide additional insight, I'm turning it over to our UPU partner, Security Program Manager, Jacob Golson. Jacob.
Thank you, Gerald, and I apologize for not having my video on. Internet connection right now is a little questionable. To answer the question, the big thing, and I understand some of the concerns regarding the costs associated to it, and the UP will continue to push this and work with our ICAO partners and our civil aviation partners. I do, part of the benefit, and that's where the DPOs, and we will work to ensure they understand this, is that the benefit to ECLB certification is if they don't get certified and carriers continue to see that, then there could be unfortunate consequences to the DPOs, which could negatively impact their businesses. To avoid that, and what I will say on that part is, whenever a DPO reaches out to us, the first question they ask is, one, hey, where's the guidelines, which we now have on our website, but also, hey, can you get us in contact with your civil aviation authority? That is one of the biggest challenges we have had. And a lot of the DPOs have mentioned is that, who do we contact? How do we contact them? Hey, can they reach out to us? Hey, can you put us in contact? And Keith has been great, and ICAO has been great in trying to overcome that. But that is something that is a challenge, and we always suggest DPOs continue to reach out to these people, because unfortunately the consequences can be detrimental to that the individual DPO if they are not certified for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem we have in general with contact information for national authorities for dangerous goods. It's a requirement under Annex 18 that they inform of ICAO of who the person is, but it's hard to keep that up to date. And there obviously is problems in some states with resources to manage. So it's something that we have to continuously work on. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Keith, is there anything more you want to add to that from a CA perspective?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm in agreement with Jacob. Through the discussions that we've had at the ECLB expert team, great opportunity to try to familiarize myself with postal matters and things that I was unaware of coming from a CAA background. It's been eye-opening. Every time that we have a meeting, I think I learned something new about the postal system and how it operates and how it, overlays the air transportation system. one thing that I think is key is, like I said before, communication is key. I feel strongly that the UPU should be present at DGP meetings. I think that we all would benefit at the panel from their unique postal perspective, hearing from any of the papers discussed, being viewed from their lens, and being able to have input, their input there. I think that is a big thing. Once again, I want to ring the bell and see if we can garner any interest in participation in groups such as the contact committee here, or the IATA for operators that are in attendance here, the IATA UPU contact committee. Even if you don't actively participate on any of the established working groups, your input or information that comes from you can help guide these groups' work. So even if you can't attend these meetings regularly or whatnot, I know the team that I chair, which is the expert team, the equipment containing lithium batteries expert team, would definitely benefit from greater participation from a wide variety of people. We have a good core group, but it would definitely benefit from more input. I think we really could work at looking at promoting the screening of airmail more widely, as indicated by a number of the panel members. It's extremely hard to tell what's in a box just from the marking and labeling. There are indicators, but it's not 100%, and screening is definitely one of the more effective ways of determining what's in airmail. So, and then finally, I'd like to look at harmonizing the reporting requirements within the TI and the Universal Postal Convention articles. They're currently at odds, and I think that's one of the work plan items that we're putting forward to address on the expert team. One indicates that they should go to the appropriate national authority, and then obviously ICAO says that the reporting should be coming to the CAA. So it causes some confusion. I don't expect DPOs to be able to track down, especially with some of the small manpower that you're looking at, to try to find the appropriate authority within a state, and then to try to find a POC within that authority, I think is a daunting task for a lot of them. Data is key in a lot of these elements to be able to identify, analyze risk, and identify trends. So I think trying to better our data reporting between the organizations is essential.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we could spend a lot more time speaking about this. There's a lot that has to be done, but our time is coming to an end. So I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your perspective and your practical experience on this issue. It's clear that lithium batteries and airmail remain a shared safety concern, and there is definitely a need for strong coordination, a coordinated effort among civil aviation authorities, designated postal operators, airline operators, and a real need to improve coordination to find ways to make sure that the DPOs and the CAAs can reach each other, better communication among authorities and all of the stakeholders, and I think continued efforts to improve customer awareness, so that anybody putting mailing knows what the requirements are. I think there's still a lot to be done, but I think we have a lot of the right people in the mix to move things forward. So I hope that today's discussion has helped clarify both the risks and the practical measures that can be taken to address them. Thank you again to our speakers and to everyone who has joined us today. We look forward to continuing this collaboration and to strengthening safety and reducing the risk. And I know Keith mentioned we would, as secretary of the DGP panel, we would absolutely welcome UPU to join us as an observer on the panel. And if anybody wants to be more involved with some of the committees Keith mentioned, they can get in touch with us through at ICAO. Thank you, everyone.
Hey,
Thank you, Ms. McGuigan. I see that one of our experts, Mr. Golson, wants to add a final comment. Mr. Golson?
Thank you, Virgilio. And to address Lynn's suggestion, so the UPU supply chain coordinator, Jan Bonchnowski, is actually already a representative on the dangerous goods panel. So we do appreciate the invite, and he is there. Regarding the communication, I did want to bring up, and we mentioned civil aviation authorities, but I should have also spoken about our carrier partners. What I would recommend is if their carriers are seeing this happening when it's being screened, when the mail's being screened, you're seeing lithium batteries or equipment containing lithium batteries that's not identified in the shipment, please reach out to the DPO, please reach out to the UPU. And also, if you have a contact in that civil aviation authority that we may not, or that our DPO does not, please also provide that just as information. So that we can try to connect that communication channel. And then one final thing, I did, and I know the US mentioned it in the comments, but I did want to ask, I believe Eric mentioned the 15% of mail containing dangerous goods. If you wouldn't mind, Eric, even offline, if you can send me where those statistics are, I'd be curious to see what the information is and how we can review that for the future. Thank you.
I can certainly give you a breakdown of what that 15% comprised, but it's I wouldn't like to identify where it came from, but it is bona fide data, and I should emphasize that was the situation prior to the implementation of effective controls, the general controls over dangerous goods.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Golson. Thank you, Mr. Gillett, and thank to all our experts on this topic. Maybe for the next webinar, instead of having 90 minutes, we will need 24 hours. So moving on to the third and final topic, the minimis requirements and impact on air transport. I'm going to hand the floor over to Mr. Christophe Pereira. Mr. Pereira is an expert in La Poste, France. So, Mr. Pereira, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Regilo. Would it be possible to share my slides?
Yes, no problem. Give me 1
Thank you
second.
very much. Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see. Sorry. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I am Christophe Pereira, the head of Customs Affairs at La Poste Group, which is a French postal operator. And today I will present the impacts of the end of the EU de minimis regime on postal operators, while also touching on the growing role of air carriers in this transformation. So these reforms represent a major turning point, not only for postal operator, but also for the entire logistics chain, including aviation stakeholders who are critical in transporting cross-border e-commerce flows and postal shipments as well. So over the next 15 minutes, I will explain what is changing, why the EU is introducing this reform, and how it affects operations, financial exposure, and coordination across the supply chain. So, yeah, please. So from July 2026, the European Union, I don't think anything, yeah, thank you. The European Union will remove the de minimis exemption, meaning that all imported goods will be subject to customs duties. regardless of value. This transforms every parcel into a customs transaction and introduce a flat rate duty per e-commerce item and per line of declaration as well. So for postal operators, this major operational shift, but I would say that it also affects airlines who transport the vast majority of these parcels into the EU. So postal operators and airlines will increasingly be impacted through the need to handle higher volumes of shipments requiring compliant data, greater expectation around preloading data transmission, but also tighter integration with customs risk analysis processes. So as a result, the air transport leg is no longer just a movement phase or a transport phase, but becomes a critical control point in, let's say, in the whole supply chain. Next slide, please. So now, if we try to understand the EU policy objectives, this EU reforms is driven by three main objectives. First, to create a level playing field between EU and non-EU sellers. Second, to strengthen customs risk management in response to growing parcel volumes. And third, to shift responsibility toward accountable operators within the EU. So we can assume that carriers could be directly concerned by the second objective, for example. As authorities move toward advanced risk assessment, they increasingly rely on data provided before arrival, often at the stage of air transport. This reinforces the importance of initiatives such as EAD, for example, or preloading information, where air carriers play a key role in transmitting shipment data before goods even land in the EU. So while the reform targets import processes, it effectively extends upstream into the air cargo segment, making post and airlines part of the compliance ecosystem. Next slide, please. So now, if we have a look on the operational shock, this reform definitely creates a real operational shock. Each parcel now becomes an individual customs case, significantly increasing processing requirements. This is not limited to postal facilities. Of course, carriers also face rising complexity as they must ensure that shipments they transport are accompanied by complete and accurate data, especially accurate EAD, electronic advanced data. So in practice, what does it mean? This means that this means more stringent data validation before uplift, increased coordination between postal operators and airlines, of course, and potential operational disruptions if data is missing or inconsistent. If data quality is insufficient, parcels can be delayed even before arrival, creating bottlenecks at the airport or in the sorting centers, postal operators sorting centers. So in this sense, operational risk is no longer focused or concentrated at destination, but distributed across the entire supply chain, including the transport leg, obviously. Next slide. So what could be the financial and structural exposure? This reform also creates significant financial exposure, especially for postal operators, because the main need to advance, and it is the case for the majority of posts, the need to advance duties and provide guarantees, generating cash flows pressure at scale. So while airlines are not directly responsible for customs duties, and it is clearly mentioned in the regulation, they could be indirectly affected by increased operational costs linked to compliance processes, potential disruptions impacting flight loading and turnaround times, and growing expectation to support secure and compliant transport flows. So there is also a structural issue. The system assumes strong controls over shipments, while both postal operators and airlines often depend on data provided upstream by marketplaces, sellers, or origin postal operators. So this creates a shared challenge across the supply chain where responsibilities increase, but control over inputs remains limited. Next slide, please. So one of the major problems we have across Europe is that among what we noticed in the past few days is EU postal operators, but also EU customs authorities have different interpretation and also apply different solutions to the reform. And so we have definitely diverging models across the EU. Different EU countries are adopting different customs models, which creates complexity, not only for us, for postal operators, but also for you as carriers operating, for example, across multiple destinations. So post and airlines have to adapt to varying data requirements, to different clearance models, but also to inconsistent operational procedures sometimes across airmail units or airports. So definitely we have to recognize that this reduces efficiency and makes standardization, let's say, more difficult at a global level. As a result, coordination between postal operators, customs authorities, and carriers becomes essential to ensure smooth cross-border flows despite the, as I explained, this fragmented environment. Next slide, please. Yeah. So looking ahead, adaptation will require a fully coordinated approach across the supply chain. Deliberate duty paid models are one of the key solutions for postal operators, but their success depends heavily on accurate upstream data and reliable transport execution where air carriers play a crucial role. Stronger collaboration is therefore essential. Postal operators, airlines, and customs authorities need to align on data standards, information sharing, and also the risk management practices. Airlines, in particular, will be instrumental in enabling early data transmission and secure transport, supporting customs authorities in identifying risk before arrival. So ultimately, success will rely on two key factors: high quality data and strong coordination across, let's say, all stakeholders, all actors, including, of course, the aviation sector. Next slide. As a conclusion, what I can say, the end of the de minimis regime in the European Union is transforming not only postal operators, but the entire supply chain, postal supply chain. And of course, air carriers are becoming key partners in customs compliance as controls increasingly shifts upstream through data and risk management processes. So adapting successfully will therefore require collective response, collective effort across postal operators, airlines, and of course, a regulator, customs authorities, etc. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr.
And Christoph.
Pereira.
Yes, sorry. From the airline side, I think it's also important to point out what Christoph has talked about. Obviously, from the carrier perspective, we learned a lot last year from the U.S. implementation. But from the most important pieces to understand that collaboration on a bilateral level from the post and the airlines is extremely important, and having that communication level so that we can share the vital information to set up those data flows is important. The carriers don't always know what's in the consignment based on many of the rules for carrying mail. So we have to rely as carriers on those posts to be supporting that information clearly. As Christoph said, it's very important to note that in the EU side, the carriers are not responsible, while in some of the other countries, including the US, the airlines are responsible. And so there has been an ecosystem of third parties that have been set up to create that. That's not necessarily necessary in the EU, although some country regions are following that model. But I think it's extremely important that everyone understands from the carrier perspective, we want to keep the mail moving. However, with the government and regulations that are changing, it's very important for us to continue to have good dialogue and understand the information so that we can ensure that there are no legal issues that come forward. Many of the airlines have created different kinds of legal agreements as a part of the contracts between the posts and the airlines to ensure that this continues and that we can keep the mail moving. And so I think that's an important aspect, and Christoph highlights some of the really important challenges that we work through as we meet these goals with the deadline looming. Thank you, Christoph.
Thank you, Geoffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Elder. Thank you, Mr. Pereira, for that presentation. We have 5 minutes left, so I put in the chat a link to the survey, a link and the QR code to a survey. I'm asking all participants, please fill out the survey whenever you can. This will help us improve future webinars. We still have 4 minutes left, so I want to make good use of this time. I have a question that maybe can be answered quickly by one of our experts. Could you provide insights into the anticipated impact of the new proposed lithium-ion battery classification and testing criteria on airmail transport? So if any of our experts or the moderator want to answer this question?
I think I answered it quickly in the chat, and maybe somebody can add on to what I have to say, but I think it's premature to be able to say that because the system is still being developed. There is a lot that is going to have to be done, but we don't have it yet. I think they're nearing completion of it, but that's just the way lithium batteries the hazards can be classified. The next step is going to have to be how we would modify the provisions. So I would think that there's a good chance that there will be some impact, but hopefully it will be better. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that.
Thank you, Ms. McGuigan. So I want to thank all our distinguished experts, our moderator, all participants for taking part in this webinar. Again, I put in the chat a link to the survey and the QR code, so please kindly fill it out. As mentioned before, the recording will be shared, or I don't remember if I mentioned this, but the recording will be shared with our partners, UPU, the IAEA, IATA, which in turn will be able to share it with their stakeholders. The questions in the chat box will be answered by our experts in the subsequent hours or in subsequent days, depending on time. And your feedback is really important to us. There are so many questions. There is a lot of work to be done. The topics that were covered today were based on the feedback provided by you in previous webinars. So thank you very much for that. Having said that, I want to wish you a nice day, a nice evening, wherever in the world you are. And if there are no further comments from the moderator or the speakers, once again, thank you very much. See you in the next webinar.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you again.
Thank you.
Virgilio.
Really
Oh, did
appreciate it.
Virgilio
Thank you,
leave?
everyone.
Thank you.
Virgilio, did you want us to stay on?
Thank you.
No, Lynn.
No, okay.
Great job, Virgilio, Lynn, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope we can talk
Thank you.
soon
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you,
to
Gerald. Thank you,
debrief.
Lynn. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Okay, that's a good idea. Lynn.
Bye. Yeah, I think it would be good for us to debrief in the coming days.
Yep, I'm good with
Okay.
that. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot. Take care. Good night. Good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.